If your blood runs orange and blue, this is the pod for you. You're listening to Orange and Blue Bloods, hosted by EJ Stewart and Tommy Beer. Let's get to it, New York.
Game one, locked down. This is Orange and Blue Bloods, a New York Knicks podcast, Audacy WFAN original. I'm EJ Stewart, joined by Tommy Beer. Boy, we got a great show for you guys. We're talking Knicks playoff basketball. The Knicks winning game one on Saturday over the Cleveland Cavaliers. They now have a 1-0 series in their first round matchup. We'll talk about how they got that win, who the heroes, who are the villains, all of the big storylines coming out of that big game one win for the New York Knicks. We'll also preview game two, which happens on Tuesday in Cleveland. Knicks have a golden opportunity to go up 2-0 potentially against the Cavs, and we'll talk about what they have to do to make that happen. And plenty of storylines in the first weekend of the NBA playoffs. We'll talk about some of these injuries, some of these upsets, some of these injuries, maybe how they impact the Knicks and their future in this postseason. So a lot of conversations to be had on this episode. Joining me is my co-host, Tommy Beer. Tommy, how are you feeling up 1-0?
Listen, you know, as we'll talk about, a lot of things went wrong. You didn't get your A-plus game from a lot of key contributors, but you did get a brilliant performance from Josh Hart and a classic prime Jalen Brunson second half, and just enough on the margins to push the Knicks to a very important game one victory. We talked about the importance of game one heading into the series, and now the Knicks have locked it up. It's a little more juice to the series, and now the objective is to get greedy and go for two. But before we get there, let's talk about game one, EJ.
Let's talk about game one. And before we do that, this is, again, Orange and Blue Bloods, a New York Knicks podcast, WFAN Audacy original, a podcast you can get wherever you get your podcasts, including the free Audacy app. Make sure you hit the auto download feature on your streaming service so you get these episodes every time we drop. We drop 3 times a week. It's our first episode for this week. So make sure you hit that auto download feature on your streaming service to get these episodes every time we drop. Also, be sure to check us out on YouTube. You can find our video podcast, not just on the WFAN page, but also on the Audacy Sports page as well. So make sure you check us out there as well. Make sure you subscribe to the Audacy Sports and WFAN pages. So let's begin with game one. The Knicks kicked off the playoffs with a monster win on the road in Cleveland. Jalen Brunson's 27 points, including a 21-point second half, propelled the Knicks over the Cavs 101-97. The Knicks trailed early in the first quarter, but then led most of the way with Brunson leaving the game early with 3 first-half fouls. Some of them may be questionable calls, but nonetheless, 3 first-half fouls had Jalen Brunson essentially on the bench for most of the first half. Julius Randle, who returned triumphantly from his 17 days off with an ankle injury, picked up the slack, scoring 16 first-half points. He finished with 19 points and 10 rebounds. Cleveland stormed back in the fourth quarter to take a brief lead, but the Knicks were able to close the game thanks to a clutch three-pointer from Josh Hart, who scored 17 points in the win. Some big shots from Jalen Brunson. 2 offensive rebounds that were crucial. 1 from Isaiah Hartenstein, 1 from Julius Randle, and then some clutch free throws by Quentin Grimes to seal the deal. For Cleveland, it was Donovan Mitchell who led all scorers with 38 points. He had a 20-point second half. Darius Garland had 17. So, Tommy, how were the Knicks able to get this win?
Yeah, you mentioned the 2 offensive rebounds late in the fourth quarter. They were huge. So credit to Randall and Hartenstein for those 2 offensive boards. And that's a theme we talked about going into the series, the Knicks' ability to dominate on the glass. That proved immensely important. Knicks out-rebound the Cavs 51-38 in game one. Talked about Quentin Grimes, 2 clutch free throws. First 2 free throws of his NBA postseason career. Knocked them both down. Huge buckets. And obviously what Jalen Brunson did in the second half really put his imprint on the game. And it's at this point, we shouldn't be surprised. You know, going back to season 1, the last season, the first round series against Donovan Mitchell, who was then with the Jazz, and Brunson obviously then with the Mavericks. We know what he is capable of doing. But I thought the guy who gets the game ball and kind of the takeaway for me was the importance and the impact that Josh Hart had on this game, and potentially has had since he's arrived in New York, and hopefully will have for many years to come, including the next week and 2 weeks and however long this fun little journey this postseason lasts, because he was just so immensely important. 17-10, 2 assists, scored more points than the entire Cavs second unit combined, all 4 reserves. Hart had more points, had twice as many rebounds as those 4 second unit players from the Cavs. He had 10 boards. This is, as we've talked about, his actual first postseason NBA game of his career. Joins Patrick Ewing as just the second Knick in franchise history, with more than 15 points and at least 10 rebounds in the contest. Was 8 of 11 from the floor. Just did all the things that you had hoped when you made a trade and give up a first round pick for it in a midseason deal. All those things that you had hoped he'd done over the second half of the season, and he did it, on Saturday night. And we talked time and time again about just the way he puts his impact and in his forcefulness, his physicality, his ability. We saw him take that step back 3-pointer, which is the biggest shot any Knick has hit in a really long time, considering the context. This would have been a really tough game to lose, considering the Knicks had that big fourth quarter lead. Cavs came charging back. Obviously, Mitchell's going to do what he does. If Knicks had blown that lead and lost game 1, it would have been a really deflating loss. Josh Hart, shot clock winding down. Randall and Brunson can't shake loose of their defenders. Hart recognizes that the shot clock's about to expire. Step back 3 over J.D. Osman. Next time down the floor, Mitchell pulls up for a 3-pointer. Hart grabs the defensive rebound, and away they go. Knicks never forfeit their lead. So I just thought it was a huge performance by Josh Hart, and he just gave you everything you could ask for, and was, if not the primary reason the Knicks won this game, certainly one of a very, very valuable contributor.
Definitely can't argue with Josh Hart getting a game ball, because you're right. The shot was clutch. I thought his defense in this game was also exceptional. Sometimes he has trouble with the quicker guards, and I thought that he was up to the task guarding both Mitchell and Garland at various stretches in this game. So Hart, and then don't even mention the 10 rebounds. And again, him going out there and helping the Knicks dominate on the glass, something that we talked about really much of last week, and it really kind of was evident in this game. I mean, they had 51 rebounds compared to 38 for the Cavs. Cavs giving up 17 offensive rebounds in this game. Josh Hart, a big factor in that. He had 5 offensive rebounds in this game. So the Knicks, if they're going to be able to score on this team, if they're going to continue to get good possessions, a lot of it's going to have to be getting offensive rebounds. A lot of it's going to have to be getting multiple opportunities. I thought Josh Hart said something very interesting at halftime, because I'm going back and forth. I started on MSG. I started on ESPN for a bit. Went to MSG. MSG was where I was for most of the game. But I wanted to go to halftime at ESPN because I know they were talking to players throughout the game. And halftime, they're talking to Josh Hart. And Josh Hart said the key to the Knicks in that first half was running, because he said, you can't defend that. And I thought, okay, that's what the Knicks feel like is the key to winning this series. They got to get out in transition, because they know facing Cleveland's set defense, they're going to have some success when you got a guy like Jalen Brunson who can just boogie on anybody and get buckets. You're going to have a shot, but that's not something they want to do for 48 minutes. So I thought the Knicks in the first half were able to kind of overcome really poor performances from RJ and IQ and Brunson on the bench, and by getting up and down the court. It got Randall some open threes. It got Hart some layups and drives to the basket. It got them some offensive rebound putback opportunities on layups in transition. I thought that was a big key in this game. But I mean, we talk about the greatness of Jalen Brunson. That's what it is. I know it's not just, oh, he's a good player, or he's a guy that's hot, or a guy that's finding his way. He's great. He's a truly great player. And to see that game, Cleveland goes on that run, and I think they cut it to 1, and Cleveland ended up still taking the lead, but Brunson getting that ball and telling Thibodeau, "Hey, don't call timeout. Don't call one. We got this here." Even that told me, wow, this guy, he is so ready for this moment. He's not going to let the Knicks lose this game, even though they ended up giving up the lead still, and Tibbs eventually did have to call a timeout. I just knew how locked in he was, and the decision by JB Bickerstaff to put Cedi Osman one-on-one on Brunson maybe the worst decision making I've seen from any coach all in the throughout those first round games I saw. I don't know if Isaac Okoro is banged up still. I know he also was so ineffective offensively. He missed all 4 of his threes. I don't know if that has something to do with that, but that seemed like the easiest, quickest way to die late in the game was to say, you know what, Chetty Osman, we're not going to send doubles. We're going to let you go one-on-one. We're going to sit and help defense, and you're going to guard one of the best one-on-one scorers in the NBA. And hey, good luck, dude. Have at it. I don't know. That seemed like a really questionable decision. So, yes, major props to Josh Hart. Props to Tom Thibodeau. I thought he coached his best game as a New York Knicks head coach. The way he managed the rotations, knowing that Randall's going to have limited minutes, trusting Obi Toppin, who Toppin gave him really good minutes in this game, then having to maneuver Brunson getting in foul trouble, and then having to maneuver RJ and IQ being so ineffective offensively, and still finding a way to find the right combinations throughout the game to keep them up most of that game. And then to make the late substitutions, to put Ihart back in the game, to put Quentin Grimes back in the game in the last 2 minutes. It was a masterclass from Tom Thibodeau. His best coaching performance by far as Knicks head coach. And it was when they needed it most. So props to the entire team. Great team win in game 1 over Cleveland.
My only minor quibble with Tibbs was waiting a little bit long to put Grimes back in place of
You're
RJ.
Right. That was my quibble as well.
Yeah, because RJ, but agreed. He got his Tibbs had his hand forced a little bit by Randall, who's clearly exhausted, wasn't 100%. But plenty of credit to Randall for Gutton hadn't played in 17 days. Scored 8 first quarter points within which the Knicks badly needed, especially with Brunson limited by foul trouble. So a ton of credit both to Randall and Tibbs in that respect. And yes, you mentioned Obi's minutes. I wanted to make sure we gave some flowers to Obi. He gave them really important minutes, and they're going to need it as Randall kind of works his way back. It was kind of the ideal situation for Obi. So a lot to like there. And yes, Brunson isn't good. He's great. And he's been a true difference maker since, the entirety of the season, especially in the clutch. And once again, stepped up, stepped in, and did his thing.
Absolutely. I do want to make sure we give real props to Julius Randle, because that is a tough spot to come in having not played for 17 days with, the only playoff experience he has in his head, which we know he can get in his head very often, being that Atlanta series. And him to come out and play so well in that first half, and for him to not get baited by Donovan Mitchell, who I don't know what the hell he was doing on that little scuffle he tried to start. Randall gets clobbered, which was happening a lot through that game. He gets clobbered by Jared Allen in a play that could have been a flagrant foul. Randall only just shoves him off of him after he just got clobbered. And Mitchell looks like he's trying to start some kind of fight or some kind of situation. And Randall just turns around, laughs it off. This is waving at the crowd and is smiling. I'm like, okay, Julius Randle is completely locked in, because a month ago, that would have been a whole situation. He would have gotten Mitchell's face. He would have got a technical foul. He may have got thrown out. When I saw how he reacted to that, I said, Randall's he's on a different planet in a good way this time. He's on a different plane. Maybe those 3 weeks was what he needed. But his approach, his energy, and for him to be as exhausted as he clearly was, because we saw how gassed he was in that second half, him to go from the three-point line and sprint to the baseline to get that basketball, sprinting past Evan Mobley, guy who's 20 years old, in prime conditioning, hasn't missed a game, and to get that offensive rebound to ensure that the Knicks got a chance to win that game and seal it with those free throws. It was a man's performance. It was a heroic performance. It was a warrior type performance. Much love to Julius Randle as we record this podcast on Monday. That was a man's game kind of performance for him.
Yeah, and as we talked about time and again, Randall doesn't need to score 30 plus points to be supremely effective.
Exactly.
Grab an offensive rebound here and there and kind of do what he does, use his physicality, use his strength, and that's exactly what he did, and get some key buckets early on. And his shooting percentage wasn't great, but defend, rebound, and look for the open man, and that's what he did.
How do we feel about the performances with RJ and IQ? Both guys struggled with their shot mightily. I think I thought RJ's defense was really good in this game, and he had 6 assists, so he was able to impact the game in some way. IQ, I don't know what he was on, but it felt like to me he was sped up. It seemed like the playoff moment caught him, quite frankly, and I was surprised by that because we know what kind of big game player he's been for the Knicks this season. where do you see those guys kind of fitting in moving forward in this series? Do you feel confident they can turn it around? Because as great as Nick Wynn was, it's very hard to think that you can get a combined, 2 for 17 from Quickly and Barrett and win many games in this series.
Totally. I think IQ will bounce back. We've seen him play well in big spots. He had a poor game. You're right. Didn't look comfortable. Looked like the moment was a little bit too big for him. Maybe put a little bit too much pressure on himself. Sixth man of the year conversation. And, I need to step up. Maybe when Brunson got in foul trouble, may have thrown him off his game a little bit. But for whatever reason, this obviously was one of the worst games IQ has played the entire season.
Absolutely.
So for the Knicks to get away with that is huge. And I do think he'll bounce back. RJ, same concerns. I thought he was an X factor coming into the series. And I thought they needed him to play well for, 4 games, essentially. If they can get 4 wins, they got to win without him playing all that well. So now maybe they only need 3 games, 3 good games from RJ. But as you know, still found ways to contribute. Thought he, should have got on the floor for a couple loose balls early in the game.
Yeah.
That was a missed opportunity. But again, defensively, did kind of, did a solid enough job, stayed in front of guys, was locked in. Again, the 4 steals, 6 assists, those numbers matter. He knocked down that 1 3-pointer. Man, that was good to see it through. But again, keep attacking the basket, get your foot in the paint, spray out the shooters. Those are the things you can contribute. And I think we'll have a couple good games from RJ. And if not, more Grimes, more IQ, more heart if he doesn't have it.
Yeah, I think that it was a good sign to see RJ find a way to contribute because, again, his shooting was a disaster in this game. He was missing a lot of bunnies around the basket, but 6 assists. He wasn't being selfish. He was spraying out to guys when he needed to. And I thought the whole team, but RJ may have been the guy who was most in tune. I thought their rotations were phenomenal. It just, how many times have we seen guys get wide open threes and the Knicks kind of be just slow on the rotations? And I don't know. I don't know where all these steals were. I know at least 2 or 3 of these steals was him just being right where he thought the Cleveland Cavaliers thought their player would be. Him just being right there ready to steal the ball. I mean, he was very in tune with where he had to be defensively. The Knicks got 11 steals for the total of this entire game. So a lot of guys had multiple steal games. Brunson had 2, Mitch Robinson had 2, and Randall had 2. So that kind of shows you just how well they were playing those passing lanes. But RJ to get 4 showed that he was able to at least contribute in some way. I am honestly not that concerned with either guy because I feel like RJ is going to make some of those layups he missed. That was one of the biggest things. I mean, 1 for 5 from 3. I have to accept that that's who he is. So I'm not expecting any more from that. Some of those layups, some of those bunnies he was missing. I think he'll get better shots, better opportunities, especially given what adjustments we may see from Cleveland moving on in this series. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And IQ is a gamer. I have almost no concern about IQ. I don't know. I agree. I think maybe Brunson getting in foul trouble kind of messed him up a little bit. But I think he'll come back in this next game. He'll respond. And the fact that the Knicks getting Josh Hart really he's a problem solver. Like, this is exactly what we talked about when this trade happened. It was Brunson, Barrett is inconsistent and he has a game like this. Where else are you getting this offense? Where are you replacing that production? In the past, the Knicks just had to live with whatever those guys gave you. If they struggled, they were still playing 35 minutes a night. RJ was still getting his 35, 38 minutes a night, regardless of how poorly he was playing. If IQ struggled, he was going to have to play 30 minutes a night. It just didn't matter. But when you have Josh Hart on the bench, he can give you 33 minutes off the bench. And that was a huge part in this game. The bench destroyed Cleveland, which is exactly what we both said had to happen in this series. You can get 33 minutes from a guy off the bench, and he scores 17 and 10. I mean, that completely erases your RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly problem in this game. So the trade for Josh Hart, probably maybe the best trade during the trade deadline. I know Kevin Durant was traded, so I don't want to speak too much on hyperbole, but it just shows how important that deal was for the Knicks.
100%. Couldn't agree with you more. And, as you mentioned, IQ only played 4 minutes and 30 seconds or something like that in the second half. That's not a luxury that most teams have. They have to rely on one of their best bench players to come. And we know that IQ's played a lot of fourth quarter minutes, but having Hart there gives you that opportunity to bring in somebody who can not only eat up those minutes, can make a big impact in those minutes.
Yep. Knicks win 101-97, take game 1 over the Cleveland Cavaliers. So after 2 days off, the Knicks and Cavs lock horns again for game 2 on Tuesday. The Knicks are trying to become just the 22nd team in NBA history to win the first 2 games on the road of a 2-2-1-1-1 series format. Ironically, one of the teams to complete this feat was the 1999 New York Knicks, who went on to go to the NBA Finals and lose to the San Antonio Spurs. They beat the Atlanta Hawks on the road in the first 2 games of the Eastern Conference semifinal series that they played. Road teams who win the first 2 games of a series are 21-4 all time in this format of going on to win the series. So that is what is available to the Knicks. Essentially, a win gives you an 85 to 95% chance to win the series if they get it done in Cleveland. So how realistic is it from what you saw in game 1 for the Knicks to not only get a split, but then leave Cleveland with 2 games in this series?
Yeah, listen, it's not crazy. I mean, as we mentioned, Emmanuel Quickly, Quinn Grimes, RJ Barrett, a combined 3 of 21 from the floor. Randall 1 of 7 in the second half. Brunson limited to foul trouble. Donovan Mitchell had 38, and Knicks still come back and win that game 1. So would I be shocked for those things to kind of flip flop? And I think the Knicks, like we talked about, have to get greedy right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the Knicks have a great opportunity in front of them because it's funny. When I watch these series, what I like to do is I like to listen to the other side. I like to hear what is happening in Cavs world. What are they saying? How are they assessing this first game? And I gotta be honest, Tommy, they sound a lot like how I and many Knicks fans sounded after game 1 against the Hawks. That's what they sounded like. It was a lot of, well, we got to get adjusted to the speed of the game. We got to get adjusted to the physicality. And, Brunson did that. Could he do that for 4 games? I mean, that was what the Knicks and I was saying after they lost game 1 to Trae Young and the Hawks. It was, can Trae Young keep playing like this? It was, the Knicks, adjust to the physicality and get themselves back into this series. Like, it was all those things that I kept hearing from Knicks fans, and what I was spewing was what I was hearing from Cavs fans. And I looked at that and I said, if you're relying on a lot of these things to kind of just flip themselves and turn this thing around, and you think that you don't have to play much better for you guys to actually come back in this series, that you think that you guys can kind of just figure it out and just show up for game 2 and things will just be better, I think they could be in for a rude awakening. I really think the Knicks have a chance to get this game because, as you mentioned, Tommy, like, you had IQ giving you nothing, essentially. I mean, not only did he give you nothing, he was really a minus. And with the turnovers he was having, again, he didn't seem in tune on either side of the ball. So you got nothing from IQ. RJ Barrett was able to give you some assisting and some defense, but he couldn't give you any scoring. Jalen Brunson essentially did not play in the first half of this game. Julius Randle is coming off of an ankle injury, having not played basketball, at least in an NBA game, in 17 days. And that was the game you couldn't get. You couldn't get that game where you got Donovan Mitchell giving you a 38-point performance and a big second half. You couldn't get that win. That, to me, is a really rough sign for what the Knicks have in store for them. I'm assuming what the Cavs have in store for them. So I think that it is realistic that the Knicks could find a way to win game 2. Now, I think that there are certain things that you probably don't want to happen in game 1 that you don't want to happen in game 2 in order for you guys to win. Like, I don't think you want to live with another 0 for 5 from IQ. I don't, Mitchell getting 38. I mean, we know he's a great player. You don't want him to average 38, so you probably want to get that number down just a little bit. So that is something that's going to be a problem. But I do think that there is a way for the Knicks to play essentially similar to how they played in terms of beating them on the glass, remaining physical, being in tune defensively, and coming away with a game 2 win. I don't see this high ceiling for Cleveland to play all that much better than we saw in game 1. Maybe you get a better performance from Mobley, but I don't think you're getting much from that bench. That bench has been a problem for Cleveland all season. Karis LeVert, Jackson Flickinger, who came on our show and talked about his struggles with his shot, especially off the dribble. He did not look comfortable shooting the ball. Isaac Okoro did not look comfortable shooting the ball. I just think that this is going to be a problem for the Cavs throughout the rest of the series. I think some adjustments that you could see from Cleveland in game 2. I think one, the Cedi Osman strategy regarding him against Jalen Brunson one-on-one, I would expect that to be thrown completely out of the window, or at the very least, used much more minimally than it was in that game 1. And again, that seemed that again, speaking about how much it reminded me of the Knicks losing to Atlanta in game 1 a couple years ago. That kind of reminded me of like the Frank Ntilikina coming in cold in that series to guard Trae Young in the biggest possession of the game. Like the Cedi Osman going up against Jalen Brunson in that situation. Osman not known as a defender, not a good matchup for Jalen Brunson because of the lack of foot speed. He has some length, but Jalen Brunson seemed entirely comfortable just working him one-on-one. I don't expect that to be the case. If somehow they decide that Osman is still their best option down the stretch, they're going to send doubles. At least if they were smart, they're going to send doubles. Like that was probably the most surprising thing for me from game 1 in terms of a strategy standpoint from Cleveland. The way JB Bickerstaff talked about Brunson, talked about the Knicks prior to this series. After Jalen Brunson put up 48 points and beat them after that game a couple weeks ago, in the week leading up to the series, it felt like they were teasing that you could expect a lot of double teams. You could expect Jalen Brunson to be forced to get the ball out of his hands. And that was not the case. They tried to load up Donovan Mitchell in the pick and roll actions when they tried to go small, 1-2 or 1-3 pick and rolls to try to get a switch. Mitchell was staying in help and not really leaving until he absolutely had to. But there was not a strategy to say we need to get the ball completely out of Jalen Brunson's hands. I think that will probably be the first adjustment you see from Cleveland. If it's not in the first half, I think you almost definitely could expect it in the fourth quarter that on pick and roll situations or in situations where they're isolated, I think you'll see them run 2 guys at Jalen Brunson. I think one of the things you also could see as well is a change to the rotation on that bench because, again, they got absolutely nothing from that bench. You got 0 from Ricky Rubio, 3 points from LeVert. He's going to play. Nothing they can do about that. But Dean Wade gave you 2 points. So maybe Danny Green gets some time. Danny Green, not the defender he used to be, not maybe this doesn't have the same legs he used to have, but maybe he makes a run at them and he gives them some minutes. Maybe he's a guy that can chase around Brunson for a little bit. Maybe Lamar Stevens may be a guy. He's another defender that maybe they'll try to run at Brunson, guy with a little bit of length. I don't think either of those guys are great matchups, but the minutes they got from Rubio and Dean Wade were a disaster. I mean, Dean Wade was a -14. Rubio was a -9. He had 2 turnovers in 6 minutes. So I expect there to be some shuffling on the Cavs bench. I expect there to be a much different strategy when it comes to guarding Jalen Brunson. And I think it's a little bit scary hours for Cleveland. It's a little bit of scary hours for Cleveland because to get that kind of game from Donovan Mitchell and you still couldn't win, even though the Knicks had really poor performances from guys that I just don't think you could expect to see those performances throughout this series. Like maybe 1 for 7 from LeVert is like, I think he'll have better games than that, but I don't know how much better Isaac Okoro was playing. He had 6 points and 1 for 6 from the field, 0 for 4 from 3. I mean, he's not a scorer. So that's what you're going to get from him. And Rubio is clearly not 100%. So I think that what you saw from him is probably what you're going to get from him in this series. Dean Wade is not going to be a factor in this series. They actually got a good game from Cedi Osman, besides the fact that he couldn't guard Brunson. He gave his best effort, and he did hit 2 threes. He had 9 points. He played pretty well, and they found a way to lose that game. So I think the Knicks are in really good shape. So when it comes to making a pick for game 2, I think the Knicks are going to do it. I think the Knicks are going to get 2. I really do. I'm thinking about what I saw in game 1, and the Knicks, there are certain things that just kind of won't ever really leave. That's why I thought the Cavalier response to this game was very interesting, because they were talking about fixing things I don't think that they could fix. Like, they say it will be more physical. I'm like, okay, I just don't think they're a more physical team than the Knicks. I mean, Evan Mobley's getting trucked under the basket on rebounding situations by Julius Randle and Mitchell Robinson. Like, I just don't see them out. Josh Hart is bullying their guards. I just don't see them out physicaling the Knicks. So physicality is going to travel, is never going to leave the Knicks. And they said that, well, we can rebound better. You've been a bad rebounding team all season. I don't see rebounding all of a sudden say, well, we take away the Knicks rebounding, we'll win the game. I think the Knicks are going to out-rebound them every game. And, J.D. Bickerstaff says, that they need to get a better spark from the bench. Your bench has been terrible all season. I don't think you're getting a great or much better performance from your bench. It was a series I had going 7, but after watching game 1, this looks a lot more like a 6 or 5 game series to me. It really does. So I think the Knicks are going to gain some confidence from that win. I don't think this is a Knicks team that's going to come in that's going to be kind of fine with just getting a split. I think he'll get a better game from Emmanuel quickly. I think the Knicks also get game 2, and they go up 2-0 coming back to New York. Now, the Knicks have not been a great home team, so I'm not saying necessarily that means it's a sweep. But, of course, if you get the first 2 games of the playoffs on the road, it definitely puts a sweep on the table. So we'll see what happens. Game 2, Tuesday night. Let me get the time here for you guys for that Knick game 2. But, man, I thought that of all the games we had this weekend, game 1, Knicks Cavs was one of the best we had. And there were plenty of really good ones. You had a really good one with the Clippers and Suns. You had a really good one out in Sacramento. So the Knicks Cavs put on a great performance in game 1 in terms of competition. We'll see what they do in game 2. But game 2 is 7:30 Eastern on TNT. So before we get out of here, I just want to make note. So some technical issues are not allowing Tommy to get back on the show, unfortunately. So I'm gonna take you guys out the rest of the way. So I want to make sure you guys were wondering where did Tommy go. That's what we're dealing with right now. Some technical issues aren't allowing him to come back on the show for today, but he'll be back with us very soon. So I want to make sure we make note of that. But I want to wrap the show here talking about some of these storylines that happen outside of the Knicks purview, and some of them I think are related. So you had upsets and injuries that were the key storylines for the first weekend of the NBA playoffs. The Lakers and Clippers and the Heat joined the Knicks as lower seeds to take game 1 of their respective playoff series now. I think for 2 of those teams, there was a big injury reason as to why they helped get these Ws. So in game 1, Giannis Antetokounmpo, he goes out with a back contusion in the first half. He took a hard fall on the charge, and there's a whole conversation now about whether or not, charges need to be outlawed in the NBA, which seems a little extreme to me. But Giannis goes out of game 1. He tries to come back. He can't go. Heat get that win. Meanwhile, in that same series, and in a game, Tyler Hero dives for a loose ball, breaks 2 fingers in his right hand, and now he is done for the series. He's going to be out for the 6 weeks. I thought it was quite ironic that, we know Tyler Hero is a shooter. He likes to get it up, and the guy broke 2 fingers, and first time he got the ball, he was still jacking it up. He was in excruciating pain trying to shoot a 3 with broken fingers, but that just shows you his mentality. He's a shoot first and a absolute, he's absolute assassin when it comes to offense. So regardless of broken hand, broken finger, he's going to get his shots up. So unfortunately, he got hurt in that series, so he's going to be out for the 6 weeks. So Giannis goes out in game 1, back contusion. Hero breaks 2 fingers on his right hand. He's done for the series. Won't be back at least for a month. So who knows when we'll see him. Meanwhile, in the Grizzlies lost to the Lakers, Ja Morant injures his right hand, taking a fall, driving to the basket. X-rays were negative on that hand, but he was talking about how he really could not use it, could not move it, and was very pessimistic about kind of where he was in terms of his health moving forward in this series. So when we talk about the most significant injury of all these 3, the Giannis one is very, very interesting because that is a series that I gave the Miami Heat 0% chance to win. I thought that would be either a sweep or a gentleman's sweep. I thought that the Heat had been kind of playing with their food for way too long in the season, and then they were trying to kind of like ramp it up when it was far too late. We saw how they looked coming down the stretch. We saw how they looked in the first playing game when they got dominated by the Hawks. And we saw how they looked for most of that game that they played against the Bulls, where they kind of need a fourth quarter comeback to get their way into the playoffs at home. So credit to them. They definitely came out with the right energy and the right mentality to start game 1. But I still thought that they weren't going to win that game in game 1 if Giannis plays the entire way and isn't healthy. Giannis is a really tough gun. Like, he's not somebody who's going to not go out there if he can't go. So the fact that he couldn't come back in that game was, I think, a really bad sign for the Bucks. And if there's no Giannis in the series, it's to me open season in terms of who can win that series. Like, this isn't a series where I feel like the Heat are going to be so outmanned, even with Tyler Hero being out of this series in a series against the Bucks. I mean, Giannis is the best player in the NBA. You had a lot of the players who suffered injuries or teams that suffered injuries saying, "Hey, man, it's just next man up." You can't next man up Giannis Antetokounmpo. There's certain guys that you can't say that for. And losing the guy who I think is the best player in the NBA is a crucial loss. And I think it's significant, not just for the rest of these playoffs potentially, if he can't go or if he's at 50% or 60% trying to play through that back injury. It's significant for the Knicks because Knicks did win game one. You don't want to look too far ahead because you're trying to just make sure you take care of Cleveland. But I got to be honest, like, if the Knicks get past Cleveland, and you're talking about playing the Bucks with either gimpy or not available Giannis Antetokounmpo, or you're talking about playing against the Miami Heat without Tyler Hero, I think Knicks wash both of those teams. I think Knicks will come in as heavy favorites. Now, of course, the Knicks guys stay healthy, and we gotta hope that they don't face a war of attrition in these next few games. But if you're talking about the Knicks playing against the Heat and the Bucks compromise in that major way, the Knicks got a pathway to definitely the Eastern Conference Finals. And I think I would argue they have a pathway to the NBA Finals. I think I've said from March, maybe late February, definitely I think around March, I think that they match up really well with Boston. I think they match up pretty well with Philly. It's not the easier matchup of the two, I think, but I think they match up pretty well. They've played both those teams well throughout the regular season. I would not say the Knicks are favored, but if they get the Bucks without Giannis or the Heat without Hero, the Knicks have a chance to go to the NBA Finals. That is a reality coming into these playoffs. So, of course, it's injuries. You never want to wish injuries. I want these guys all to be 100%, but it's just the reality of the situation. If that is what we're dealing with Giannis having to maybe miss games or not be 100%, or Hero is definitely going to be out, then things change in terms of the Knicks ceiling for this season. And for Knicks fans, I know that's going to be really exciting. I think when it comes to the Ja and the Grizzlies injury, I told Tommy on this show, and maybe I got to eat a lot of crow after the Lakers had no chance in this series. I thought people saying that the Lakers were a title contender, were living in a fantasy world. Maybe it was me who was living in a fantasy world. I don't know because I thought that they would have much more problems with the Grizzlies and their athleticism in game one. That was not the case. The Grizzlies had a tough time guarding in a way that surprised me. The Grizzlies are usually a really good defensive team, but Austin Reeves was doing work. Rui Hachimura was doing work. It wasn't even LeBron and AD killing them in this series. So if those guys are going to be able to be comfortable in this series, Grizzlies could be in a lot of trouble. So not having Ja Morant potentially for the rest of the series, I know they've been comfortable winning without him, but it's a lot different when you talk about not having Ja Morant while also not having Steven Adams, not having Brandon Clark. Like, at a certain point, you just can't survive all these injuries. So I have major concerns for the Memphis Grizzlies moving forward. But I want to say just my last few biggest takeaways from the first weekend of the playoffs outside of the Knicks and outside of the injuries. Number one, I think Denver made a real statement on Sunday night against Minnesota. It's not that Minnesota was a team I thought really could give them too many problems, but I think the great sign from Denver was to see how Jamal Murray and Michael Porter played, especially Jamal Murray. Because to me, Jamal Murray may be the biggest X factor in the entire Western Conference playoffs because not a lot of people were respecting the Denver Nuggets as a 1 seed. I think a lot of that is because they did not finish the season all that well. And they've had some postseason struggles. But what's interesting to me is how the Nuggets have kind of turned into this team that nobody believes in the playoffs, even though Jokic and Murray and this nucleus made their name in the playoffs. Like, their big run and these guys kind of coming into the mainstream for most of the basketball world was in the bubble. And it was during that great playoff run. They were down 3-1 to the Utah Jazz and Donovan Mitchell at that time, who was having these monster games, and they came back and won that series. They were then down 3-1 to the Los Angeles Clippers, a team that a lot of people thought was going to win the NBA championship in the bubble. And they came back from 3 straight double-digit deficits to win that series. And they competed against Lakers. They didn't win. I think they only won 1 game. They might have won and lost in 5, but they competed tough against the Lakers. And he said, wow, this young team showed up and they were ready to play in the playoffs. They weren't afraid of the moment. And then, The next year they lose to the Suns, and the Suns and 4 guy, becomes a viral meme. And then, last year you don't have Murray, you don't have Michael Porter, and you get stomped out by the Warriors, win the championship. Now all of a sudden it's Nuggets aren't a real playoff contender. Seems a little harsh to me, but what you saw from Jamal Murray, and if you remember how he played in the bubble, he was a superstar. And he looked a little bit like that in that game 1 against Minnesota. If the Nuggets are going to get bubble Jamal Murray in this playoffs, Nuggets are going to the finals. That's clear. I didn't pick them because I didn't think that we'd get Murray playing at that high level. But he looked so locked in, so ready to go. That was the late game, so maybe it's the storyline that a lot of other people aren't talking about. But I watched that game and I said, that is a very, very good sign for the Denver Nuggets moving forward. So that's one big storyline. And the other big storyline is, the team that I did have going to the NBA Finals and winning the championship is the Suns losing game 1. And you say, the Clippers were a team that people were dismissing, I thought, in the series, because I know they don't have Paul George, but Ty Lue is a really good playoff coach. He's really good he's really good with adjustments. He's really good with game planning, and he's really good at also getting his team to believe they could do the impossible. Of course, we saw what they did when he was coaching the Cavs when they were down 3-1 to the Warriors, coming back to win the NBA Finals. First team to ever do that in NBA history, to win a Finals after being down 3-1. I really think that the Suns are going to have a series. I thought they were going to have a series. I thought it was going to be tricky. But I think what was a great sign for them was Kawhi Leonard turned into Toronto Kawhi Leonard. He turned into that playoff terminator that we've seen him be throughout multiple times throughout his career. And if you have him being able to outplay both KD and Devin Booker, which is just not out of the realm of possibility. Like, that's the thing about him, is that he's so great that when he's right and he's healthy, he's in shape and ready to go. And I mean, in shape, I mean, like, in fit form, not necessarily that he's out of shape, but, he plays so sparingly sometimes. He's just not in the right conditioning, not in the right rhythm to play at a high level. But if he's going to play at that level, which we know he's capable of, Clippers absolutely have a shot to win that series because they're very deep. They have a lot of guys who contribute. You kind of can't take away 1 or 2 guys in that team. You got to try to take away Kawhi, but after that, anybody could hurt you. So you got a Suns team that has 0 depth. Their bench is maybe the worst bench left in the postseason. Clippers are going to have a fighting chance in that series. And I think that I wasn't surprised that they won game 1, but I think that a lot of other people are. And for a Suns team that's trying to kind of figure it out on the fly, this is going to be a very tough team to figure it out on the fly. I think they'll still win the series, and I think that this will be a great experience for them playing against such a good team, such a well-coached team in the first round. But man, that was a tough loss to have. So I think that the Clippers, that was a big storyline as well. And another storyline, Eastern Conference playoffs, man. We'll see how the rest of these series go, but the Celtics and the Sixers are going to walk to the second round. I think you're looking at maybe 2 sweeps. That's how unimpressive the Nets and the Hawks were in their first round. They look completely overmatched. Maybe the Hawks can figure out a game in Atlanta and get one. I didn't think the Nets would win a game in this series, and there was nothing I saw in game 1 to make me think that. So I think we're definitely getting Celtics and Sixers. There's no question about that. For both those teams, I think it's a matter of wanting to make sure that you beat these teams as quickly as possible so that you don't have to deal with the other team getting more rest of you. That is where you are right now when it comes to that playoff matchup potentially in the second round. So that's my take on the rest of the postseason. That is going to do it for this edition of Orange Blue Bloods. Again, unfortunately, Tommy wasn't able to get back on the air due to some technical issues, but he'll be back with us for sure next episode. So make sure you guys keep it locked here. Of course, you can get all these episodes of Orange Blue Bloods on the Audacy Sports channel or wherever you get your podcasts, including the free Audacy app. Make sure you hit the auto download feature on your streaming service so you get these episodes every time we drop 3 times a week. So we'll be back later on this week as well. Make sure you check us out on YouTube as well. That's where you can find us on the Audacy Sports channel and the WFAN channel as well. And make sure you catch us on social media. You can find me on Twitter, EJ_Stewart. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok, Action EJ. Tommy can be found at Tommy Beer on Twitter. So that'll do it for now. But thank you guys so much for checking us out. For Tommy, I'm EJ. Take it easy, guys. Peace. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below.
Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date on our latest podcast ventures. Links will be in the descriptions. And as always, thanks for watching, and we will see you in our next video.